Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to try to tackle something that can be a little intimidating for new developers,
Oh, yeah.
and that's getting your app authorized to talk to the high-level API. So if you are building your first integration and this whole O thing just feels like a total mystery, you're in the right place.
Absolutely. We're going to break it all down step by step.
Yeah.
And by the end of this deep dive, you'll be ready to make your first high-level API call with confidence.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so why don't we start super basic?
Sure.
Just to make sure we're all on the same page. What exactly is an API?
So think of an API like a waiter in a restaurant.
Okay.
You give your order to the waiter, which is like making an API request, and that waiter takes your order back to the kitchen, which is like the high-level system,
Right.
and brings you back your food, which in this case is the data that you requested.
Okay, that makes sense. So
Yeah.
where does this whole OO thing come in?
So OAuth is like the bouncer at the door of the restaurant. Before you can even talk to the waiter, the bouncer needs to check your ID and make sure that you are allowed in. OAuth is a way to prove to HighLevel that your app is legitimate and has permission to access that data.
Okay, so it's all about security,
Mhm.
making sure not just anyone can waltz in and grab data from high level. But why is this OAuth process so complex? I remember when I first encountered it, all those steps and technical terms were just so confusing.
Yeah, it can definitely seem a little overwhelming at first. HighLevel uses a specific type of oath called authorization code grant.
Okay.
And it does involve a few steps, but we're going to walk you through each one, and I promise it's not as complicated as it sounds.
All right, I am ready to demystify this. So let's say I am a brand new developer and I'm building my first app that needs to talk to high level. Where do we even start?
So just like at a real club, the first step is to kind of get on the guest list.
Okay.
And in the API world, that means registering your app on the HighLevel marketplace.
Okay, so we need to tell high level about our app before we can do anything else. What does that registration process look like?
Yeah, so you'll need to create a developer account on the HighLevel marketplace. Once you're logged in, go over My Apps and you'll click Create App. You'll fill out a simple form with just some basic information about your app, like its name and what it does.
Okay, sounds straightforward enough so far. Is that all we need to do to register the app?
Not quite. There are two really important things that you'll set up during registration, scopes and keys.
Okay, scopes and keys. Those sound pretty technical. Can you break those down for us?
Absolutely. So let's start with scopes. Remember our club analogy?
Yeah.
So scopes are like choosing which parts of the club your app can access. Maybe your app only needs to see like basic information, such as a user's contact details. That would be like a general admission ticket. But if your app needs to do more, like send messages or access conversations, you'll need more of a VIP pass.
Okay, so scopes are like setting permissions for our app, controlling what data it can see and what actions it can perform. What about those keys you mentioned?
So keys are like your app's ID card.
Okay.
They prove to HighLevel that your app is who it says it is. You'll get two keys, a client ID and a client secret. Think of those like your app's username and password.
Got it. Okay, so I've registered my app, set the right scopes, got my app's ID card, the client ID and client secret. Does that mean I can start making API calls now?
Not quite yet. So we've gotten past the bouncer at the door, but now we need to get permission from the manager.
Right.
And in this case, the manager is the high-level location or agency admin whose data your app wants to access.
So it's not enough for our app to be registered. We need to get approval from the actual users of high level.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense. How do we do that?
So your app will have a special authorization page URL. You can think of this like as a VIP guest list, and you need to give this URL to the high-level admin. They'll visit that page, choose the location they want to connect, and HighLevel will redirect them back to your app with a special code.
A code. So it's not as simple as the admin just clicking yes or no.
Yeah, it's a bit more involved than that, but this code is really important. It's called an authorization code, and it proves that the admin actually gave permission for your app to access their data.
Okay, I'm following along. So we've registered our app, set the scopes, got our keys, and now we have this authorization code from the admin. What's the next step? Is this where we finally get to make API calls?
We are almost there. We just need to trade in this authorization code for our actual access pass, and that's where the Get Access Token API comes in.
Another API. So you're telling me we need to use an API to get permission to use another API. APIception.
It does sound a little crazy, right?
Yeah.
But bear with me. You'll make a call to this Get Access Token API, and you'll include your app's client ID, client secret, and that authorization code we just got from the admin.
So we're basically sending in all of our credentials plus that special code, as proof that we have permission. What happens next?
If everything checks out, HighLevel will send back an access token, and this is our golden ticket. This is the thing that finally lets us make those API calls and access the data we need.
Okay, this is starting to click now.
Yeah.
We've gone from clueless newbies to having an actual access token. It's like we finally made it past the velvet rope and into the VIP area.
Exactly. And now your app can start making API calls and retrieving the data that it needs, all thanks to that access token.
This is great. But I have a feeling there's more to the story, right?
Yeah.
This access token probably isn't a forever pass, is it?
You're absolutely right. Access tokens do expire after a certain amount of time. And we need to talk about how to handle that. We also need to discuss rate limits. Those are like the club's rules about how many drinks you can order per hour, but we'll dive into all of that in the next part of our deep dive.
I'm ready for part 2. This is way less intimidating than I thought it would be. Thanks for breaking it down so clearly.
You got it. We'll be back after a quick break to delve into those details and wrap up our oath journey.
All right, so we've got our app registered, we got the thumbs up from the HighLevel admin, and we've traded in our authorization code for that coveted access token. Feels like we finally arrived at the party.
That's a great analogy. But like any good party, there are a few house rules we need to be aware of.
Okay, so what are the house rules when it comes to using this access token?
Well, the first one is about token expiration. Remember how I mentioned that access tokens don't last forever?
Yeah, you definitely hinted at that cliffhanger. So what happens when our access token expires? Do we have to go through that whole process again with the admin and the authorization code?
Thankfully, no. HighLevel uses something called refresh tokens, and they are a real lifesaver. Think of it like this. You are at the party, and you have lost your drink ticket, but luckily, you have this VIP card that lets you get a new drink ticket without having to go back through the entrance line.
So a refresh token is like a VIP card that lets us get a new access token without bothering the admin again. I like it.
Exactly. When you make that initial request for an access token, HighLevel will also send you a refresh token. You'll want to store this refresh token securely because you'll use it to get a fresh access token whenever the old one expires.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like having a backup plan in case our access token gets lost or expires. What about those club rules you mentioned earlier?
Right. Those are called rate limits. Just like a club might limit the number of drinks you can order in an hour, HighLevel has limits on how many API calls your app can make within a certain time frame.
So we can't just bombard HighLevel with a ton of requests all at once. We need to kind of pace ourselves and respect the limits. Why do these rate limits even exist?
They are there to protect the HighLevel system and make sure everyone has a good experience. Imagine if one app was making like thousands of requests per second. It could really slow things down for everyone else.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So how do we know what the rate limits are and how to stay within them?
HighLevel provides really clear documentation that outlines all the rate limits. You'll find information on how many requests you can make per minute, per hour, and so on. It's important to familiarize yourself with these limits and design your app to stay within them.
Got it. So we've covered token expiration, refresh tokens, and rate limits. It feels like we've really mastered the art of getting our app authorized and making sure it plays by the rules.
I'd say you're well on your way. But there's one more scenario we should discuss. What if you want your users to be able to log into your app using their existing HighLevel credentials?
That's interesting. So instead of creating a separate login system for my app, I could just let users sign in with their HighLevel username and password. That would definitely be more convenient for them.
Exactly, and that's where external authentication comes in.
Okay, external authentication. It sounds like we're going a bit deeper into the API rabbit hole here.
Not to worry. We'll keep things clear and simple. Think of external authentication like having a VIP entrance at our club. Instead of waiting in the general admission line, your users can just flash their HighLevel membership card and walk right in.
Okay, so it's a way to kind of streamline the login process for our users. But how does external authentication actually work? Is it another layer on top of OAuth?
It is related to OAuth, but it's used in a slightly different way. Instead of authorizing your app to access data, we're using it to authenticate your users. Basically, we're verifying that they are who they say they are by checking their HighLevel credentials.
Okay, I see the difference. We're still using OAuth, but in this case, it's about verifying the user's identity, not just the app's permissions.
You got it. And when it comes to external authentication, HighLevel currently only supports the authorization code grant type that we discussed earlier.
All right, so we're back to authorization codes. It feels like everything circles back to that concept.
It's definitely a core part of the OAuth process. But remember, we've already covered how that flow works, so you are well equipped to handle it.
That's true. It's starting to feel like I can speak fluent OAuth now. But I can't help but think about security. If we're letting users log in with their high-level credentials, how do we make sure that information stays protected?
That's a crucial question. And security is always top of mind when dealing with sensitive data. High Level takes security very seriously, and they have several mechanisms in place to protect user information.
Okay, that's reassuring to hear. Yeah. Can you give us a little peek behind the curtain and explain how high level keeps things secure?
Absolutely. Imagine you're at the club and you have your wallet with all your important stuff in it. You wouldn't just leave it lying around, right?
Definitely not. I'd keep a close eye on it.
Exactly. Well, High Level uses something called signed tokens and shared secret keys to protect user data. These act like a digital lockbox for sensitive information.
A digital lockbox. That sounds pretty high tech. Can you break down how that works?
Think of it like a secret code that only your app and High Level know. Whenever your app needs to access user information, it uses this shared secret code to create a signed token.
So it's like a digital signature that verifies that the request is coming from a trusted source.
That's a great way to put it. And this token is encrypted, meaning it's scrambled to make it unreadable to anyone who doesn't have the secret code.
Ah, so even if someone managed to intercept the token, they wouldn't be able to make sense of it without the decryption key. It's like having a secret language that only our app and high level understand.
Precisely. And to make things even more secure, the actual decryption of this information happens on the back end. That's your app server, not on the front end, which is what the user sees in their web browser.
Okay, so the sensitive data is never exposed in a place where it could be easily accessed. It's like having a secure vault where the valuables are stored.
Exactly. This multi-layered approach ensures that user information is protected at every step of the process.
This is all making a lot of sense. We've covered so much ground from the basics of OAuth to the complexities of external authentication and data security. It's amazing how much goes on behind the scenes to keep everything running smoothly and securely.
It's definitely a testament to the thoughtfulness and care that goes into designing robust APIs. And for developers, it's important to understand these concepts so you can build integrations that are both powerful and trustworthy.
Absolutely. We've talked about authorizing apps, authenticating users, and keeping data safe. What else is there to consider when we're building our high-level integrations?
There's one more piece of the puzzle we need to discuss, and that's the idea of user context. It's about how your app can securely access specific information about the user who is logged in, like their name, their contact details, and what they are doing within a high level.
User context. That sounds like a crucial piece of the puzzle, especially if we're building an app that needs to personalize the experience for each user.
You're exactly right. And we'll delve into all the details of user context and how to access it securely in the final part of our deep dive. Stay tuned.
All right, we've covered a ton of ground in this OAuth adventure. We talked about getting our app authorized, keeping user data safe, even letting users log in with their high-level credentials. But you mentioned one last piece of the puzzle, user context. What exactly does that mean, and why is it so important for developers?
So user context is all about accessing specific information about the user who is logged into your app. Think of it like this. You've built this amazing app that connects to high level. But to make it really powerful, you need to know things like the user's name, their contact info, maybe even what actions they are taking within high level.
Okay, that makes sense. If we want to build a personalized experience, we need to know something about the user. But didn't we already cover this when we talked about data security and those digital lockboxes?
We touched on it, but user context is about digging a little deeper and accessing specific pieces of user data in a safe and controlled way. It's like having a key to a specific drawer in that secure vault, rather than just having access to the entire vault.
Okay, I see the difference. So it's not about grabbing all the user data. It's about getting the specific pieces of information we need to make our app work its magic. But how do we actually access this user context? Is it another complicated process involving tokens and secret codes?
It does involve those elements, but High Level has made it surprisingly straightforward. It all starts with something called a shared secret key.
Okay, another key. Is this different from the client ID and client secret we talked about earlier?
Yes, this key is specifically for accessing user context. Think of it like a master key that only your app and High Level know. You'll generate this key within your app settings on the High Level marketplace, and it's incredibly important to keep this key secret and secure.
Got it. Treat this key like it's made of gold. So once we have our shared secret key, how do we actually use it to get the user contact?
So this is where things get really interesting. HighLevel uses this shared secret key to create signed tokens that contain the encrypted user data we are looking for.
Encrypted. So even if someone managed to get their hands on this token, they wouldn't be able to read the user's information.
Exactly. The encryption acts like a powerful shield, making the data unreadable to anyone who doesn't have the shared secret key. Now, there are two main ways your app can get access to these encrypted tokens, through custom JavaScript code or by using custom pages.
Okay, so depending on how we built our app, we have different options for getting this data. Can you walk us through both of those methods?
Absolutely. Let's start with the custom JavaScript approach. If your app injects JavaScript code into HighLevel pages, you can use a special method provided by HighLevel called Expo Session Details. This method allows you to request the encrypted user data using your app ID.
So it's like sending a signal to HighLevel saying, hey, we're a trusted app and we need the user's information.
Precisely. HighLevel receives this request, checks your app ID to make sure you are authorized, and then sends back the encrypted user data. But remember, we can't decrypt this data directly on the front end. We need to send it to our app's backend server where it's safe and secure.
Right, we wouldn't want to risk exposing sensitive information in the user's browser. So we send this encrypted package to our backend. What happens then?
This is where that shared secret key comes back into play. Your backend server receives the encrypted data and uses the shared secret key to unlock it, like a digital key opening a high-security vault.
Ah, so the backend is like our secure decryption chamber. Makes sense. What about the custom pages method you mentioned? How is that different?
If your app uses custom pages hosted outside of HighLevel, you'll need to use a slightly different technique called postmessage to communicate with the main HighLevel window.
Post message. Is that like sending a message in a bottle, hoping it reaches the right destination?
It's a bit more reliable than that. Think of it like sending a secure message through a designated channel. Your custom page sends a request for the user data through post message, and the HighLevel window receives this request. HighLevel verifies your app's authenticity and then sends back the encrypted data.
Okay, so whether we use custom JavaScript or custom pages, the end goal is the same: to securely obtain the encrypted user data from HighLevel.
Exactly. And once your backend server has that encrypted data, it can decrypt it using the shared secret key, revealing all the valuable user context information your app needs.
Wow, we've really gone deep into the world of high-level API authorization and security. It's incredible how much detail goes into protecting user data and ensuring that only authorized apps can access it.
It's a testament to the importance of security in today's digital landscape. And for developers, it's crucial to understand these concepts and implement them carefully to build integrations that users can trust.
Well said. So, for all of our listeners out there who are building their first high-level integrations, remember, you can create powerful and personalized experiences, but always prioritize security and handle user data with care.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to dive into the documentation and explore all the amazing possibilities that HighLevel's APIs have to offer.
This has been an amazing deep dive. Thanks for guiding us through the world of oath and user context. It's been enlightening and empowering.
My pleasure. It's always a joy to demystify these concepts and help developers unlock the full potential of HighLevel.
Until next time, happy coding, everyone.